In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one true God, glory be to him, and may his grace and mercy be upon us forever. Amen. Good morning, good evening, Shlomo, Namaskaram to all our followers, well-wishers, and viewers of URHO the Way. Welcome all of you to another exciting program. Today's program, we are focusing on the Syriac Lectionary system, focusing on how the system developed and how it was used from the early days of the church down to today. And joining us today is a familiar face on our platform, 𝗵𝗲 Dr. George Kiraz. For a short introduction, he is the founder and and director of 𝗏𝗲 𝗦𝘆𝗀, the Syriac Institute, the editor-in-chief of Gorgias Press, and a senior research associate at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. He is a graduate of Oxford and Cambridge universities, and he has published extensively in the fields of computational linguistics, Syriac studies, and digital humanities. And his latest books include the Syriac Orthodox in North America, 1895 to 1995, A Short History, and the Syriac English New Testament. He is also an ordained deacon of the rank of Evangelion in the Syriac Orthodox Church, and he also serves on several patriarchal, synodal, and local committees. Let's welcome back 𝗵𝗲 Dr. George Kiraz to URHO the Way. Welcome, 𝗵𝗲.
Thank you very much for this introduction, and welcome, Shlomo, to all the viewers of URHO. I'm quite impressed with the series and all the presentations that have been given on URHO the Way. I was with you a couple of times before. Today we are going to be talking about the lectionary system. First, I just want to explain maybe what the word lectionary is. Lection means reading, and in Syriac it is called furosh qaryono. Qaryono is also reading. Basically, it is what is the system of reading Bible texts during the liturgy. What do I read on this Sunday? What do I read in the morning service? What do I read in the evening service? What do I read in a funeral? What do I read in a wedding? Each occasion has its own readings. So we are just going to talk today about the development of this system within the Syriac tradition. I'm going to share a screen, a presentation that I have. I hope you will see it. Let me see.
While we wait for that, I just want to let our viewers know that we also have Q&A at the end of the lecture. So if you have any questions, please put it under the video on YouTube and in the comments, and I can pull it up for 𝗵𝗲 to answer. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Is my screen shown?
Yep.
Very good. Okay. So before we talk about the lectionary system, we need to talk a little bit about the liturgical cycle to understand the calendar, the structure of the calendar in the church. Basically, I'm going to try to see if I can get the pointer so I can do a laser pointer. There we go. Okay. So we need to talk about the structure of the calendar. How does the sequence of Sundays go in the church? So the liturgical calendar is divided into cycles. In general, we have cycle number 1, which begins with Qudush Ito, the Sunday of the sanctification of the church, and we will talk about that a bit later on. How do we determine when this begins? This is basically think of it as the New Year celebration of the liturgical year, the first Sunday of the liturgical year. This cycle is before Christmas, and it basically ends with Christmas. Then we have a second cycle that begins after Christmas, so around the beginnings of January. starts with Epiphany, and we call it the Epiphany season. After the Epiphany season, sometimes in late February, in March, in April, depending on the year, we come to the next season, which is the Lent season. This is the Lent season, the fasting period before Easter. And then somewhere in March and April, we get to our fourth cycle, which is the Easter week. And then after the Easter celebrations, we have 3 cycles, 5, 6, and 7. We call them the cycles after Easter. And they take us all the way up back to 𝗲𝗳𝗰𝗄. That means then we cycle back to 𝗲𝗳𝗰𝗄. Now, there is a bit of a divergence between the hymn cycle, the liturgical cycle, in terms of the book of 𝗵𝗲, which is the book of the hymns, and between the lectionary system after Easter. The names of the Sundays may differ, but that's just something on the side. On top of this, of these cycles, we have a virtual cycle, the feasts of our Lord. By virtual, I mean it's not a cycle where the Sundays are consecutive and following each other. It's basically the major feasts of the Lord: Christmas, Epiphany, Annunciation, Ascension, Assumption, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, we have other holidays like the glorification of Mary, saints like Peter and Paul, and we have services that have nothing to do with the cycle. So, for example, we could have services for baptism, for weddings, for funerals, for ordinations. All of these Sundays and feasts and weddings and celebrations require readings from the Bible. So how do we know what to read? So before we talk about that, let's just go back to our cycle 1. How do we determine when the new year starts, which is the beginning of cycle 1? Basically, we ask the question, is November 1st falling on a Wednesday, on a Thursday, on a Friday, on a Saturday, or on a Sunday? If the answer is yes, then the first Sunday of November is our 𝗲𝗳𝗰𝗄, is the first Sunday of the liturgical cycle. If the answer is no, then the last day of October is 𝗲𝗳𝗰𝗄. So it's one of these 2 Sundays, either the end of October or the first Sunday of November, depending on whether November 1st is occurring on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Now, we are using, of course, the new Gregorian calendar in the church for these fixed Sundays, and we will talk about the calendar system as well. That means the solar and lunar calendar system, not the church calendar, because it affects when things begin and when things end. But for now, this is how we compute the beginning of the liturgical year, the Sunday of 𝗲𝗳𝗰𝗄. Also, we need to know that our civil day, like today is Saturday, tomorrow is Sunday, is different from the liturgical day. Our civil day begins on midnight. So today is Saturday, and we wait until midnight, and then midnight we have Sunday. The liturgical day is a bit different. The liturgical day begins on sunset. Technically speaking, begins on sunset. So today, Saturday, when sunset happens, as far as the liturgical day is concerned, Sunday starts. we are on Sunday, although in our civil day, in this evening, we're still on Saturday, but liturgically, we will be on Sunday. So if you go to church today in the evening for an evening prayer, we call it 𝗏𝗰, you will notice that the clergy are chanting for a couple of minutes, and then they stop, and they either silently or murmuring or sometimes collectively, they will say the Trisagion, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 𝗦𝘆𝗀 𝗧𝗵𝗃 𝗦𝘆𝗀, and then they will say the Lord's Prayer, and they will repeat it again, only after a few minutes. What's going on? When we go to church in 𝗏𝗰 in the evening, we are still on Saturday. Today is Saturday. And we will perform the last prayer service of Saturday, which is the 9th hour. And that takes few minutes. And then that ends, and that is the end of Saturday. And this is why the clergy, they stop, they turn to face the altar, and they say 𝗧𝗵𝗃 𝗦𝘆𝗀, and they say the Lord's Prayer to finish Saturday. Then you hear them repeating 𝗧𝗵𝗃 𝗦𝘆𝗀 and repeating 𝗵𝗲 𝗏𝗔, because now they are beginning Sunday, as if sunset happened. Although we are still on our civil day, we are on Saturday. And they start with the 𝗏𝗰 and the 𝗬𝗏 of Sunday, basically. And then tomorrow morning, actually our Sunday also, it's still Sunday, they go to church and they do the morning prayer and they do the 𝗏𝗏, and that will be actual Sunday until sunset on Sunday, where the liturgical day flips to Monday. And this is why when we take a look at some manuscript later on, we will see that there are readings for the 𝗏𝗏, the morning, readings for 𝗏𝗰, for the evening, and there are readings for the 𝗏𝗏, for the Eucharistic liturgy. So let's talk about how this system of readings developed. Back in the 5th century, the Bible manuscripts had no markings whatsoever. I am sure that by the 5th century, people were reading from the Gospels, from Acts, from the Epistles, from the Old Testament. Obviously, they were reading. But we have zero information in terms of information on Bible manuscripts. Nothing is written. In the Bible manuscripts, we only have the text. So, for example, the Gospels, we have Matthew, and after Matthew, we have Mark, then we have Luke, and we have John. Typically, Gospel manuscripts are by themselves. Or if you have the letters of Paul, they are one letter after the next. If you have Acts, one chapter after the next. Same thing with the Old Testament. If you have the Pentateuch, the first 5 books usually in a volume, one chapter, one book after the next, one chapter after the next, no markings whatsoever as to what to read. If there was any information, that information was somewhere else. And probably there were indices, people were keeping lists. And we have a list from the 6th century. In the 6th century, we have our first list, basically, that is saying, for this feast, do this reading. For that Sunday, do that reading. And there is a key manuscript from the British Library from the 6th century, and this is the number of this manuscript. It is one of our earliest surviving lection, let's call it indices, let's call it an index, a list, a table, by itself. Now, starting in the 7th century and during the 8th century, we start seeing that people are mixing this index, this table, into the Bible manuscript, so that you have the text and you have an index. Think of it as a table of contents, or think of it as an appendix that will be part of the same manuscript. So they will say that for this particular Sunday, let's say for Christmas, you are going to do this reading. How are they going to indicate the reading? Of course, the early manuscripts did not have the division of verses that we have. This is a modern, relatively speaking, a modern division. But there were two types of divisions. One where you might think, okay, give me the page number. But also people did not mark the page number. What they marked is they marked the choir number. Here, do you see choir on the slide? What is a choir? When a manuscript was written, usually it had every 5 sheets were folded and then written like a booklet. You fold 5 sheets together inside each other and you are writing. So that's your first booklet, so to speak. And when you fill them out, you take another 5 sheets, you fold them, and you put them after the next booklet. So you have booklets after each other. These are called choirs, or sometimes they are called signatures. And then the binder will come and will sew them together into a book. They will be sewn. These choirs will have a number. The first booklet will have number 1, the second booklet number 2, the third booklet number 3. So this is one way, because there was no page numbers. This was one way of getting and finding the location where a reading could be. So the index will say, go to choir number 5, for example. And if later page references were added, then we'll say this page as well. Now, as I mentioned, a lection reading is 𝗔 in Syriac. 𝗔. In English, we are writing it with a Q. In Syriac, it's with the letter 𝗏. What they also did is, at the beginning of that reading, in the margin on the side, they wrote a 𝗏 to make it easier for somebody to find it. 𝗏 means 𝗔. And at the end of the reading, to mark where the reading ends, they put shin, the letter shin, for shlem. Shlem means end. And we will see some examples in manuscripts later on in some images. Next, during the 8th and the 9th century as well, we begin to see new type of manuscripts. Instead of, let's stick with the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Instead of writing Matthew and then writing Mark and then Luke and John and then binding it, the scribes began to produce a new type of Bible manuscripts called lectionaries. These are Bible manuscripts for liturgical use only, for use in the church. They started with the first Sunday of the cycle, 𝗲𝗄 𝗨𝗐𝗐. I said, okay, what is the reading for 𝗲𝗄 𝗨𝗐𝗐? Let's say if it's from Mark 10, then the book will start with Mark 10. They will say, this is the reading for 𝗲𝗄 𝗨𝗐𝗐. It's from Mark 10. They will write the text. And after that text, they will go to the next Sunday. What's the next Sunday reading? Let's say it is Matthew from chapter 2. Then they will write Matthew from chapter 2, and then the next reading, and the next reading, and the next reading. So this book now is not a book of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It is a book of the sequence of the Sundays and the feasts, and then the text of each of these feasts is written in that order. By the 9th century, in the East Syriac Church, the tradition stabilizes. But in the West Syriac Church, the sequence of readings and what to read and what not to read is fluctuating and keeps fluctuating. And we will talk about later on about how the Syriac text of the Bible is rigid. When people copy it, they are preserving the text, but there is elasticity, there is room to maneuver for usage and for practice in the church. How do I use it? In the 12th century, people went back to the old tradition of writing the Gospels in order, first Matthew, then Mark, then Luke, then John, and then within the text, in the beginning of Matthew, chapter 1, they will say, chapter 1, this is the reading for the Sunday after Christmas. And then maybe chapter 2, this is the reading of the Sunday of Epiphany, maybe. I'm just giving examples. And then chapter 3 might be the reading for something else. So now the readings are not in sequence, the text is in sequence, but inside the book there is a rubric, there is a title that says this text is for this Sunday. So let's look at some of the manuscripts. So here, for example, is a lectionary. In the beginning, we have a table of contents. And the tables of contents is very decorative, as you can see, and elaborate. So we said that the first Sunday of the church is 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗿𝗀, the sanctification of the church, either at the end of October or the first week of November. So what is our reading? Our reading is when that day began, at sunset of the previous day, remember? So it is a drum show, the evening of 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗿𝗀. And it's giving me a number in red. The numbers in Syriac are also letters. Olaf means 1. The next reading is the morning, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 of 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗿𝗀. And now it's reading number 2 in the book. Then comes the 𝗥𝗲𝗄 of 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗿𝗀, the Eucharistic liturgy on Sunday. So this is reading number 3. And then we move to the next Sunday. Reading number 4 is going to be the evening of the following Sunday, and so on and so forth. Let's look at the second one. It says 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗿𝗀, the morning of the sanctification of the church, reading B. And here they have in the margin reading B. This is the page where B begins. It says 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗵𝗀, the morning reading from John. So if you are in the index, it tells you that the morning is number 2. You keep flipping pages till you get to number 2. And you have a confirmation here, just to make sure it is correct where it starts. It says 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and it gives more information. It says this is from John. And then this is the reading. So this is a lectionary where the text is not Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The text is by the sequence of the readings. This manuscript, this is the number, if anybody is interested in the numbers. 𝗧𝗵, that means this manuscript is in the library in Berlin in Germany. Let's look at another manuscript. Here we have a table. And this table is interesting because it is not telling me what to read on which Sunday. It's actually giving the sequence, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. but it's giving the titles, the content. So the beginning of Matthew, it says about this is about 𝗵𝗲𝗬, the Magi, and then about the children of Bethlehem. It's like topics. Think of it as topics. Here is the beginning of Matthew. So the previous manuscript we looked at was not in the sequence Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. It was in the sequence of the Sundays. This manuscript is the sequence of the books Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So I have Matthew here. It says 𝗔𝗵𝗲 𝗦𝘆𝗀𝗍. And before the text begins, there is a rubric here. It tells me 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗰, the reading, 𝗛𝗵𝗀𝗊 of the Sunday, 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗰 𝗪𝗀, before Christmas. So this is the reading of the Sunday that is before Christmas, and it is given Olaf, number 1. So that is the second system. Either you write your book in the sequence of the Sundays, we call it a lectionary, or you write them in the sequence of the books, but inside the books you write what this text for which Sunday it is, and then you must have an index that tells you, like the index we looked at before, that tells you what is the number, where do you find this. So this manuscript also have this index. Again, it's very decorative. And again, it starts with the evening of the sanctification of the church. And look, because this book is, the sequence is by book, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Then this is not my first reading. It is my meme reading. It's my 30th reading, because now the reading is way inside Matthew. Remember, we said that the beginning of Matthew was the reading of the first Sunday before Christmas. If we keep going around the Sundays here until we get to here, 𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗊 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗰. This is the Sunday before before Christmas. It's number Olaf. See, it's number Olaf. I go here, it's number Olaf, and then I know how to read. So here I have an index to a gospel book that's organized by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But this list is a list by Sundays. Again, by Sundays I follow, and it gives me the index. I go to the manuscript, and then I can read my reading. And this is one of the old manuscripts where I just wanted to show you how in the early system, this is, I believe this is the Rabula Gospel, if I'm not mistaken, how in the early systems, I told you they went to a manuscript and they put 𝗏 to mark 𝗥𝗲𝗳𝗰, to mark the beginning of reading, and they put sh to say shlem, or sometimes they wrote shlem. Look here, there is shlem in the margin. That means this is election reading, and this is where it ends. That's where the reader must stop. So the Syriac Bible tradition, there's a dichotomy. There is rigidity. Here on this column, we will talk about rigidity. And there is also elasticity. There is rigidity in terms of the text. When they copy the text, the copyists are very careful to copy the text as it is, as little mistakes as possible. For this reason, when we compare Bible manuscripts of the Syriac tradition of the Pshito, we don't find that many differences between the manuscripts, not as many as we find in the Greek Gospels. The Greek Gospels has far more divergence. In the Syriac tradition, the tradition is quite rigid, it's quite conservative, it does not diverge a lot, the text itself does not diverge a lot from one manuscript to the next. And the transmission is in discrete units. As I said, the Gospels are usually in a book, the Pauline epistles in a book, Acts is in a book, the Old Testament could be in a book. And our oldest dated Gospel manuscript is from Edessa, dated October 510. It is in Deir Suryan in Egypt. And also the script is a bit, it has this bit of sacredness in our tradition. I remember when I was young, we were not allowed. I grew up in Bethlehem, so Arabic is the language when you want to read text so people can understand it. We were not allowed to read from Arabic Bibles. They had to be Gershuni. Gershuni means, although the language is Arabic, they had to be written in the Syriac script. That was tradition in the 1980s. This is when I grew up. And in fact, the head deacon in Bethlehem, one summer, he taught me Gershuni for one purpose only. He said, I want you now to start reading the epistle. He was reading the epistle. He was the only one who knew Gershuni. He said, I want you now to start reading the epistle. It will be your job. So he had to teach me Gershuni because I was not allowed to read it in the Arabic script. With all this rigidity, there is also elasticity in the sense that although we have the Pshito Gospels, and this is kind of the main version in the Syriac Church, in the Syriac Orthodox Church, we also have other translations into Syriac from Greek. For example, we have a translation called the 𝗥𝗲𝗰. In the 6th century, the style of translation became more literal, so they made a literal translation. Thomas of Harkel, that's why it's called 𝗥𝗲𝗰, made this translation. And then this translation also was used as lectionaries. So we have lectionary books from the 𝗥𝗲𝗰. But the 𝗥𝗲𝗰, because it was very literal, very close to the Greek language-wise, it was not very fine Syriac and it fell out of use. It's like if you try to translate Arabic into English or Malayalam into English, but you are trying to preserve the Malayalam grammar in English. It will be funny English. It will be how our grandparents and parent immigrants speak English sometimes. It is not very literary English. And the elasticity also comes into what we call harmonized readings. Harmonized readings is when I have an occasion and I want to do a reading, but I don't have one particular passage from the Gospels, let's say, that is the only one that works for me. Take Good Friday, for example. Good Friday, some parts of the story come from Matthew, some from Mark, some from Luke, some from John. So the church fathers went to these 4 Gospels and made one reading out of the 4 Gospels, mishmashing it basically. Few verses from here, few verses from there, and sometimes they're jumping between Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, and they make a coherent reading that will be coherent for the Good Friday liturgy. And if you go to Good Friday, you will notice that the priest is not saying a reading from Matthew, a reading from Mark, a reading from Luke, or a reading from John. All other Sundays, that's the case. Good Friday, what would the priest say? The priest would say a reading from the 4 Gospels, because this reading is mixed from the 4 Gospels. That is called a harmony. Our elasticity tradition even goes further, because our Suryoyo text, our Syriac Pshita text, is not translated into all the colloquial languages. So what priests used to do is they used to open the gospel in Syriac and on the spot translated into Turoyo Aramaic or into Malayalam or into Arabic, because they don't have a translation of the Pshito into these languages. And of course, when you translate on the spot, that means there is a variety and there is a difference between priest and another priest. But it creates kind of an ecosystem of these oral translations. So, as you can see, the sacred text is preserved in writing quite rigidly, but in practice, when it is read, it is adapted freely in practice. And until recently, we did not have a translation into English, for example, and in many churches, we will be reading from other versions, Protestant versions like the King James Bible or the NIV Bible or any other Bible. Now we have an English translation, so we can have lection readings in English from the Pshito. Mor Titos, for example, is now preparing something like this from the Antioch Bible to be used in the diocese. And I want to talk a little bit about elasticity. A translation is always interpretation. The same way the priests opened the Syriac book and they were reading in Arabic or they were reading in Malayalam or they were reading in Turoyo. The text is fixed, but in practice there is elasticity. So because the Antioch Bible is a new translation, it is in progress and in development. As you can see, this is my copy with all these marks and all these notes here. So it is okay. It is not a sin to go and to change something. Say, I want, for example, this is a suggestion, came to be by Father Joshua Mass. Why not change produce into fruit? Because the Syriac has fire. So changes like this one can do. It's not blasphemy. The text is sacred, but we should not make divine out of a translation. A translation is a translation. Now, let's just talk a little bit again about the calendar system. Our church changed to using the Gregorian system for fixed feasts like Christmas, Christmas, Epiphany on a fixed date. But Easter remained on the Julian system. It's movable. And because we kind of went from one calendar system, by calendar I mean now the solar and the lunar calendar, Julian system, and we changed it to Gregorian for fixed feast, and we kept it Julian for movable feasts, the period, let's go back to our periods, the period between Epiphany and the beginning of Lent increased. And when Easter is very late, and some days it's quite late, you may notice we are celebrating Easter 4, 5, 6 Sundays after the Catholics are celebrating Easter. In such years, the lectionary system is lacking some Sundays because they did not those Sundays, the period between Epiphany and Lent was not that huge. So there is a committee now at the Patriarchate, chaired by Mor Severus Matthias Nayish, that looked at the system, and Sayyidina Roger Akhrass, who is the head of the Syriac department and I think you heard him many times on URHO, made a analytical study of the history of the lectionary systems, compared the manuscripts, compared the 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗍 edition of 1954, and then they proposed to His Holiness and to the Synod a revision of the lectionary system, not making up something new, but going back to the source manuscripts and making it practical for pastoral needs. So pastoral needs at one point, but scholarly fidelity and keeping tradition on the other side. And hopefully these lectionary systems will come into being into being, that is, they will be practiced soon. One final slide, just to show you the elasticity of the tradition. This is a picture of my ordination as Evangelioio, and this is the gospel reading. Look at it. It says a gospel reading from John and Luke. So this is a harmony. Harmony, that means we took verses, and not I took them, in the manuscripts. That's how it is in the manuscripts for the ordination of deacons. It starts from the 𝗔𝗍𝗄 from John, and not in sequence. Verses here and there, and then it moves to Luke. And notice, not only it moves to Luke within the same version, the 𝗔𝗍𝗄, when it moves to Luke, the language is a hybrid language between 𝗔𝗍𝗄 and Harklian. And this is what I mean, that there is fidelity with the text when they are copying the text of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But when it comes to practice in the church, there's always room for elasticity. There is always room to maneuver because of the pastoral needs. So thank you very much for listening. I am very happy to take any questions. I will stop sharing and I will hand it over now.
Right. Thank you so much, Alfono. This was a great session, and I know a lot of us learned a lot from this introduction. So I had a question while we wait for any questions on the video. I had a question. So the reform that's being proposed, is it does it mean that in the earlier editions there were other readings that are lost in current practice right now?
So because of the fluidity, when you look at the manuscripts, there are some readings that will be the same in all manuscripts, but some other manuscripts will have different readings. And especially there will be divergent in, for example, the cycles after Easter. We have first cycle, second cycle, third cycle after Easter. There's a lot of repetition sometimes.
Right.
And this is why in Kerala, for example, the election system is different than the Middle East. Because in the Middle East, maybe one or two particular manuscripts were used to make the list. And in Kerala, Connaught is the one who made the lectionary, used another set of manuscripts. That's why you see the divergence. But there is no right or wrong. It's just different traditions of reading different things for different Sundays.
So is there also a difference between like 𝗏𝗏𝗰 𝗦𝘆𝗀, those?
Yeah. So there will be.
Yeah.
I personally have not done any studies, and I don't know if Sayyidina Roger, in addition of doing the analytical analysis between the manuscript, if he divides them into families or into historic, like the regions from where these came from. I am not sure, but that's a research on its own right.
Right. So the effort is then to move towards a unified lectionary for the whole church, right, and not rely on local traditions, or not. I mean, just have a standard, maybe.
Yeah. Well. Currently, all the all the churches of the Middle East and the diaspora of the Middle East are using the 𝗔𝗵𝗍 system,
Mm.
and
Okay.
Kerala is using the Konat system.
Right.
The idea is not to unify these two, but the idea is to revise the 𝗔𝗵𝗍 system to make it closer to older manuscripts. When 𝗔𝗵𝗍 has a lot of repetitions and there are some readings that are not read at all, maybe to include them on Sundays where there are no feasts, so that all the Gospels are read. And there are other parameters that Sayyidina Roger and his team, put together to come up with uh, this revised, let's call it revised lectionary system.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So there is a question I received earlier. So in our lectionaries, there are, I mean, in the Syriac Bible, traditionally there are these books which were not included originally, right? I think they're called the Western Five, Second Peter, Second John, Third John, Jude, and Revelation. So at least in Kerala, in Malankara, we have readings from some of these. Can you talk a little bit about how that happened, or is it included right now, even in the?
Those books that you mentioned, the minor general epistles and Revelation, are not part of the Peshitta canon. So we don't have them in the Peshitta version. We only have them in a 6th century translation, much later on, and that means they came to Syriac by the 6th century. And in general, not only in the Syriac tradition, these books are not that major in the Eastern traditions in general. They were debated, even in the Greek
Yeah.
tradition. Are they canonical? Are they not canonical? Even the Greek tradition was also debating them. By the time the books were translated into Syriac, the Peshitta was always finished and fixed, so they were never part of the Peshitta, but they were part of the Heraclean, the later translations. And the current version that we have of Revelation, just to show you how unused it was, we have so many gospel manuscripts, so many manuscripts of the epistles, Acts. We only have one manuscript of that text, apart from the Heraclean ones, this earlier 6th century translation. And even that manuscript, the first 8 verses of the first chapter are lost. The first page is lost. So we don't have that. So if you look in our Syriac English Antioch Bible, you will see the first 8 verses in square brackets because they are reconstructed. They are reconstructed from the Heraclean, but changing the language to make it Peshitta-like. Yeah, so they are reconstructed. So they were never used in lectionary readings in the tradition.
Okay. Is there a plan to integrate it now that it's?
I am not sure if there is a plan. The readings that were proposed, I believe, were the Gospels, the lectionary that was revised.
Yeah.
So I am not sure whether there will be a decision to include them or not include them, and if to include them from what version, and of course.
Right. Okay. In this question, it says that they are. I'm not sure, but they said that some of these texts are present in the lectionary in Malankara. So that are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that, but my guess would be that it was added much later. It would not be.
Not
It
in
would
the
not be
source
based.
manuscript.
Yeah, it would not be in the source manuscripts. I don't know if Connaught added them or after Connaught. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And another question was, so our lectionary seems to be an important transmission source for texts such as Second Baruch and for Ezra. Are there other examples of lost texts that are
Yes.
found only in lectionary manuscripts or our
No.
lectionary Syriac
Yeah.
ones?
No. Only the ones that that you mentioned. Yeah, and
Right.
sometimes the lectionary system helps us to have these texts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Is it okay? But they are not. So yeah, I know in many cases the only sources that we have for some of these texts are lectionary manuscripts, right?
Yeah,
Is
and
there
some
some?
of the,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's
No, I
not.
was going to say some of these texts are also, I think, in the manuscript from the 6th, 7th century, 7A1. I'm not sure if all of them, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So is there something which is like a daily lectionary system for each day? I know that's something popular in maybe in monastic circles. Is it something that's available?
I believe not in the Syriac tradition, not in manuscript traditions. Of
Mm.
course, it would be nice to have something for people to read every day,
Every day. Yeah.
and yeah, and I would propose that maybe we can take the revised version that Sayyidina Roger and his team put together, and based on Sundays, split readings into days, for example. That would
Mm-hmm.
be a nice thing, because every Sunday doesn't have one reading. You have the evening reading, the Ramsho, you have the Safro reading, you
Yeah.
have the Kurobo reading. So you have three readings. So three readings should be able to split them into 6 days, let's say, if you want to take a break on Sunday because you're doing it in church.
Right. Right. Yeah, and then you can prepare for the Sunday in that way.
And then you'll be ready.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I had. Um, if you have any other last comments to make.
I myself, the only thing that I like to always tell people that the Bible is very important for spirituality, but also we always need to remember that in Orthodoxy and in Syriac Orthodoxy, we also have other elements that put the church together. There is tradition and there's liturgy and there's scripture. They are all
Mhm.
working together. In some other traditions where there isn't much liturgy, focus becomes Bible only, and then divination goes to the Bible.
Right.
And this is why I wanted to stress that in practice it's okay. We can change a translation, we can change a reading. uh, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, so we have to always read the gospel, whether we read it from the Antioch Bible, the Pshitto, or we read it from Protestant versions, from the King James, from NIV. Always read things with a grain of salt.
Mhm. Yeah. So even in case of so I mean translations from the Peshitta is one thing, but even the Peshitta itself is I don't know. Would you call that a translation? Because there are variations in manuscripts as well, right?
Yes, yes, of course. The Pshita itself is a translation, but the difference is that the Pshita is an early translation. Yeah,
Right.
so it
Right.
becomes a version. Yeah,
Mhm.
so the Old Testament was finished by the second century.
Mm.
The Gospels that predate the Pshita were done by the second and the third century. By the fourth century, we have a stable text.
Right.
So when it comes, that means when once it becomes fixed, it becomes sacred within that tradition. It
Right.
becomes the Bible of that tradition.
Hmm.
which must be then preserved within that tradition. That's different
Right.
than
Yeah.
a modern translation where we could fix things.
Right. Yeah, and it's not competing with the other, like the Septuagint tradition,
No, no,
something.
it's not. And the
Right.
church fathers, they realize this, and in their commentaries, for example, 𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏, they will say, this is the reading, but in the Septuagint it's this, in the Greek it's that. Sometimes when they say Greek, it's through the Heraclean
Hmm.
or the 𝗧𝗵𝗲. That's how they view it. But they are aware of differences, and they're
Right.
telling the reader there are differences, and the reader should know that there are differences. You know, the Bible,
Right. They're not hiding it.
the
Yeah.
Bible did not descend from heaven in an English version, or in a German version, or
Right.
in the Dutch version. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Those are all really good insights. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Malfono. Just want to, yeah, I think we can wrap up this program now. We're almost at the 1 hour mark. So on behalf of 𝗔𝗏 𝗍𝗶 and all our viewers, thank you, Malfono, Dr. George Kiraz again. I thank God for all your great work that you're doing in the field of Syriac studies and in helping us all to understand our faith and our traditions better. And I thank God for this great opportunity to share in the richness of our faith and liturgy. And good day and good night, all of you. God bless all of you.
Thank you very much. 𝗏𝗏 𝗍𝗍.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.